Hello you fabulous lot, it's Gran here with another episode from the Rusty Gears server. Now then, it's been a while since I last uploaded, but we have been doing quite a bit of building, so this video is catching up with how our house has progressed. That's Punk and me, of course, because we're building this house together. And because he is on the other side of the world, we don't actually meet up very often, so do have a look at his perspective. And as with all the other gears, a link to their channels are in the description below, so do take a look. Because there's lots of things been going on, lots of shenanigans. There's been an awful lot of chiselling as well, I can tell you that. And I've been blown away by all the stuff I never knew, honestly. And between Quentin from Cupitech, who is on the server with us for this season, and all the other gears who are very chisel mad, there are some wondrous things appearing, and some of them you'll see. So, as you can see, the Kapok tree is going to feature quite a bit in our build. We love the colour of the planks, which are going to be a feature of decoration on the outside of the house. But we are going to be using quite a few other materials throughout the build, and hopefully you'll like the look of it as much as we do. Now, I do like myself a bit of dry stone walling, and I don't mind which material it's made out of, and as we're in a chalk desert, I think it's quite fitting that we use chalk dry stone for the foundation stone. It does look quite clean against this granite. And after trying it in a few places, it wasn't long before I thought, yeah, that's the way to go, I think. We have a lot of dry stone in rainy Yorkshire here, so it feels more like home for me. A few other things kept me busy as well during the building of this house, like my front garden. As I mentioned previously, I had it in mind to make myself some gamboized armour, and you need a lot of flax for that, well, a lot of linen, but at this moment in time it wasn't too pretty. I did collect a lot of grass though, that comes in useful, but I didn't have too many flax seeds, and I didn't have high fertility soil, so keeping the grass out and replanting it and watching it grow is all I could do at this point. I had to keep my tools up to scratch as well, and as you can see, my pick was nearly dead, so it was time to make another. It was an iron pickaxe at this stage, but they were getting on with steel production, so it wouldn't be long before I had a steel pick. And whilst I was there, I made a few crates that I could put in my wall in my cellar, just to extend my storage, because there wasn't an awful lot of it at this point. And crates come in very handy for that type of material where you've got a lot of one type. And I always think they look quite nice embedded in the wall. It was very rainy and misty when I got on next time. I think it's the first rain I'd seen. And 8-Digit had left me something at my old place. But first, I had to look at the house. Well, Punk had been very busy whilst I've been off. All the walls at the front were up, and he'd started adding the Kapok decoration to the outside. And when I went inside, I found that he'd got all the walls up. That was a lot of plaster. It really was. And the Kapok decoration looked exactly like it should. It was lovely. It really, really was setting it off. I love the way he'd done it. But I needed to go and see what was at my house. And it wasn't long before I came across some chiselling that I absolutely loved. Look at those window shutters. They're gorgeous. Now, I won't be stopping at everybody's builds and showing you what they've been doing, because they'll be doing that on their own channel. So do go and have a look at them and see what they've been up to. And I really don't want to show any spoilers. I almost went past my house because Per's build had changed so much. Look at that. Her house was a diddy little thing. The whole of the back of it was gone. That was amazing. It was quite cute, actually. And it didn't take me too long to suss out what present 8-Digit had left me. A steel chisel. Wow. That would do me, thank you very much. I did have a couple of chisels, but I didn't have a steel one. So it was back to the build to see what I could carry on with. I'd found a piece of concept art on the internet, and I quite liked the way it looked. And when I showed it to Punk, he quite liked it as well. And that's basically how we decided what build we were going to do. Now, I've used concept art as a basis for a build before, and I do know that sometimes things don't always go to plan because concept art, well, it's just that, it's a concept. It's not been tried out, and I don't think there's been any architectural involvement. So, you quite often find when you're building them, you have to use a little bit of poetic license, which can be a little bit of a challenge, but quite rewarding when you've got it right in the end. My first challenge was putting a circular bit to the front of the house, and I needed more plaster. So first thing was to get some grinding done with some chalk. Now I didn't have a quern set up, but I knew where there was one. And it wasn't soon before I was back at the smithy. It was a place I often found 8-digit adding to all the things that were in it. So I started hand turning the quern to grind the chalk. But no, that wasn't the way to go now. We'd moved on from hand turning. And it wasn't too long before I got a taste of what 8-digit had been up to in the smithy. In the flick of a switch, the quern was going 10 to the dozen. Wow. Now that is what I'm talking about. There was quite a lot of chalk already being ground, so as I was able to leave my stack in and to take a stack that was already done. And while I was busy making quicklime, 8-digit was busy making me a different chisel. This was a true chisel. A hammerless ultra high durability chisel for those who wish to pay the price. Note the recipe consumes the hammer, and I think Dampers had a hand in this being developed. In draw mode, left click to pick a colour, right click to draw with that colour. That took some getting my head round, I must say. And quicklime was in production, big time. So I'd used the plots modeler to make my circle, and I'd used the pantograph to get it symmetrical. The hard part was making sure that I had it on the right block to copy the pattern over. And once it was in the right spot, I could use the wedge tool to mirror it. And then it was just a matter of chiselling it all away. I started off with a planer where there were large areas of block to get rid of. And then various sizes of the chisel. It was winter and it was getting a bit chilly at night time in the desert. I could do with that flax growing a little bit quicker, but there was no shortage of fire pitch that I could choose from to get myself warmed up. And with a little peat in there and a little torch to fire it up, I soon found myself getting cosy and warm. As soon as my screen unfroze though, I was back at work chiselling away. I was nearly halfway round. After that I could use the pantograph and the wedge tool for the rest of the circle. You had to be quite precise with the wedge tool though when you were using it. The pantograph was okay, copied it over nicely. But if you got the wedge tool on the wrong bit, then it flipped it the wrong way. But the wedge tool has an undo button and I'm very thankful for that. I use it all the time. And then it was just a matter of using the pantograph to copy the pattern all the way down to the floor. Only you needed to copy the right bit for it to turn out right. The shadows notwithstanding, I thought it came out okay. And after standing back and scrutinising it, after comparing it to our picture, I noticed a little flaw in my design. It was supposed to be plaster right down to the ground, so I adjusted that. Next, I needed to collect a few samples of different coloured stone. Slate was quite near, so I didn't have to go far for that. Chert was also quite near. There was a chert desert quite near us. But there was always somebody who knew where something was. It was dodging the wolves that were the problem for me. I just kept running. And I ran fast. And luckily, I evaded them. Don't know how that happened. The raft was my solace, though. I felt safe on a raft, away from all the trees, the wolves and the bears. Claystone was next on my agenda, and Sid knew exactly where there was some. So I headed north, past all the trees, the wolves and the bears, and I found some. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was just enough to give me a sample, so I could try it out on the build. And using the quarry mod made very short work of it. I stayed on the raft to get most of the way home. And it was whilst I was looking for a safe place to land to get me back to the village, I spotted what looked like it could be conglomerate. Nobody had mentioned conglomerate. I hadn't asked about it though, but it seemed like it could be a good block for the build. So I thought I'd nab some. Yep, that's what it was. So I was soon utilising my splitters and my hammer to grab myself a sample. The next time I was on, I managed to meet up with Punk, and he'd laid a walnut floor. It looked gorgeous. I was right chuffed with that, I really was. And he'd started putting some windows in. Nice, very nice. We get quite a few temporal storms on the server, and people have been very clever at making storm shelters, and I quite liked the one that Quentin had made. So every time I was on and there was a storm, I headed straight down Quentin's hole. And I was hoping for a temporal gear so I could set my spawn and avoid another run from our original spawn. It usually took a little while before they started spawning, and it wasn't long before Quentin appeared. And once they started spawning, they didn't stop. They just kept coming. And there was my first temporal gear. Bit of a surprise really. I was thinking I would have to get a double header. Whilst I was waiting for more to come on my side, Quentin was going great guns on his side. He looked quite the part really with his sword. I'm not quite sure what the hammer was for though. I was soon killing drifter after drifter in the hope that I'd get another temporal gear, because the next thing that I'd like would be to make a rune, so that when I was out and about, exploring and whatnot, I could use my rune to get back to spawn quite easily. There was quite a lot of them. It was quite scary at times as well, because You had to kill them before you could actually harvest them, because if you harvested them while there was others milling about, they could give you quite a swipe. Most of the drifters were handing me flax, which was quite nice to have, because I was wanting flax, but I'd rather have temporal gears. It took me quite a lot of hits before I killed them, which made me think maybe I should be thinking about getting a better weapon. I was hoping near the end of the temporal storm I might get a double header, but it wasn't to be. On the way back to the house, I followed Quentin to have a look at his tent. I was a bit speechless, really, and I couldn't believe that this was a tent. It was awesome. I believe it's the decorative chests that do this. I haven't really dabbled with those yet, but I think I will be doing. And he proved it by packing his tent up and unpacking it. That was amazing. It really was. I shall have to think of something quite novel for my tent this season. And the fact that it carried all his stuff and his stuff stayed in his chests, that was a bit amazing as well. And you couldn't do that with the ordinary chests. That was some pretty awesome chiselling. And there's much more to see. Well, my chiselling woes started off with the wood. Yes, the kapok. I liked the kapok. I liked all the woods, but all the woods have a grain. And when the grain's not going the right way, it can be pretty frustrating. And previously, when I've come across this situation, I usually change the main block and I make sure that the wood grain is in the orientation I want it to go in. And that usually works out quite well. And then I'd go back and replace the main block with whatever material it needed to be. But there is another way that's new to me. I'll show you that shortly. I had a little problem with the support beams, and if you remember previously, whenever you touched a chisel block with a support beam, it stuck to it like glue. So if the support beam was on incorrectly, you just couldn't remove it. You had to destroy the block. But now, when you break the block, the support beam falls away, so you can reuse the block. That is awesome. It really is. The amount of blocks I've destroyed in the past to try and get rid of a support beam was so frustrating. Now, you can just try again. And if you are very careful and just place the support beam on a full block instead of a chisel block, it should work okay. Nice. That is a pretty cool change. I like that a lot. Next, it was a bit of texturing, and after trying a few different colours, Punk came up with the ideal solution, something that I hadn't thought of because I thought it was just too light, but it was limestone, and it went so well. It really did. So I did a little bit of chiselling to do a little bit of texturing with a little bit of depth. I wanted the bottom to look a little bit weathered, so I'd removed quite a bit of the plaster and replaced it with the limestone. And I was just replacing it back again to make it look like it had been sheared off by maybe the sandstorms or the weather. her had been collecting plant pots to plant cactuses in, and she'd made them available for anyone to choose one and place them on the side of the front door in memory of Hippie. The next time I came on, a gorgeous little house had been built right next to us. It was gorgeous, but it definitely wasn't there when I was last here. So I needed to look round the house to see what had been done, and then I would go over and inspect it. There was a lot more of the K-pop on, a few more windows. It was looking absolutely fab. And once I'd looked around it all, I needed to go and have a look at this new house that had appeared. It was gorgeous, it really was. All the different blocks in it gave it a lot of depth. I loved the block palette, and it was Andy. Andy Days had built this. Now, I know Andy had started building quite away from the village, but recently he decided to come into the village to build a house. I never thought it'd be right next to us. Very nice having Andy as a neighbour. I shall be watching out for his shenanigans because he usually has one or two up his sleeve. Next, back at the house, I wanted to add some brickwork on the circle at the front. I needed a bit of mortar and some ashlar blocks. This took me quite a while to do because each layer of this area was a different layer, so I couldn't just do one little bit and then pantograph it all the way around. And added a couple of layers of the brickwork. It seemed to be giving the look that I wanted. I just needed to add a little bit more depth on the bottom edge. And when I'd done that and stepped back, it gave me the effect that I wanted. The next temporal storm found me back in Quentin's hole. And I was really hoping for another temporal gear here. And as soon as it started, that I got a double header. I was determined to get it. It was mine. I was more or less guaranteed a temporal gear from that. But I had to kill the other ones first. Well, the double header was dead, but there was still a lot of movement around it. And try as I did to get the loot, I daren't get close enough to do it. Once I got in there, bingo. That was awesome. And all of them had something to give me. Nice. I don't think I could have got better than that. Well, it's pretty exhausting dealing with drifters. but I went right back to chiselling. I was quite happy with the way it was looking. I added some more depth in the natural demarcation lines of the brick. I kept an eye on my garden and kept moving them over as the flax grew, and I harvested them to make them grow as quick as they could. And then 8-Digit came up with a few more seeds for me. That was awesome. I was able to plant the whole of the garden. I was right chuffed with that. Next, it was time to do a little bit of roofing, and the little bit I was concentrating on was just above the circle that I'd just done. I needed to fit a set of windows in there. We'd chosen slate for our roofing. It fitted really well with our palette. And we had a gift of some mortar from our very friendly new neighbour, Andy. With one row of the brickwork done on the circle at the bottom, it was beginning to look just like we wanted it. I was quite pleased with that. It would need another couple of rows above it to finish off that top section, but I was quite pleased with how that was turning out. It had been quite fiddly to do because I had to place each individual voxel. But sometimes I quite liked fine work like this, something to really concentrate on. I found it quite relaxing. But once it was done, I thought it looked the part. Quite like that. I quite liked it a lot. And on this occasion, I'd met up with Punk, and he was getting on with a tricky bit on the right hand side that involved arches. As you saw earlier, besides the K-POC, we did use some K-POC support beams as well for decoration. And once I'd marked the windows in the correct position, then I could change them into arched windows. And that immediately changed the aspect on this side. It was coming along, was this house? It was coming along. Back at the garden, my first big batch of flax had matured. Apart from a few dead turnips which had been overeaten, I had a very good harvest. And was about ready to make my armour. So from flax fibres into twine, and then twine into linen, and then linen into cloth. And I quite like the blue colour that I chose last season, so I went off to find some blue dye. And I knew just where to go. Per had been busy building quite a large complex. It was a laboratory with all things to do with chemicals and dyes, and it was the first of a group of buildings that Per was building at the north end of town. I soon found what I was looking for. There were a couple of tubs of dye, and I used the smallest first so that it didn't leave any waste, and then the rest of my cloth went into a full tub. Well, it was nearly a full tub. I would certainly have to keep my eye out and collect wood on my travels like I did last season for Shino's dye factory. Nice. There was lots to this lab. There was all sorts of ores everywhere. The tannery was there as well. There was a section over here with all the different bits and bats you got from the sluice. It was amazing. It was massive. It was beautiful. And the village was just getting bigger and bigger. It was time to stretch my legs for a bit, and I thought I'd take this opportunity to have a little look at Sid's new build. It was a modern build set on a hill above the old spawn. I was feeling quite brave, and I needed to really, because I needed to watch out for some wolves on the way. I tried to stay safe by staying out of the really dense areas where there was a lot of trees, but I couldn't really avoid it. But I ran, like I usually did, and crossed my fingers. Right, we'll go this way. Let's have, oh, those are wolves. Let's go this way. Let's go this way. Okay, this is a bit better, I think. Those are foxes. That's all right. Those are foxes. Oh, I can see it from here. That looks really cool. Oh, my goodness me. No. Run. Okay, this is not going well. Oh, I can't run fast enough with this chest on my back. Oh, no. Oh. Oh, I died again. Oh, for goodness sake. I wonder if I can get my stuff back. I'm going to go and get my stuff back. I need my stuff. Right, I can see it on the map. It's this way. It's this way. There's that wolf over there. I don't want to encounter it again. Is that another wolf there? Oh no, it's a bull. It's a bull. Let me get my stuff. Let me get my stuff. Oh no, how do I get it? How do I get it? No, I don't want to. Ah, there we go. There we go. Right, I just need to pick this up now. I just need to pick it up. Stay away, wolves. Stay away. Oh my goodness me. It's time for home, I think. I set about replanting my flax garden, and with all the flax I had, I could fill the whole garden just with flax. Flax, 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 flax. And then revisited the lab to see if my cloth was ready, and it was. Nice. There was much more here than I needed. I only needed 16, but I thought I'd do some for repairs. So I got straight to it and made myself some armour. I did my helmet, I did my leggings and my body armour. Nice. And a bit left over for repairs. Back at the build site, I was there again with Punk, where we needed to use a little bit of poetic licence to join up one bit of the build to another and make it look right. And with a few minor adjustments, it was looking just like we wanted. Still quite a bit of work to do on it, but it was getting there. I was working on a little bit of support beamage just above where I put those initial 2 windows. There was going to be a little row of windows just above that, when Sid came by to show me his tent. Some people were being very innovative with their designs. As soon as he put it down, I thought it was quite cool, but then he started adding other bits to it. And in the end, it was a rucksack. It was quite cool. I really liked that. Wow, those decorative chests were so cool. So, we were getting on with the house really well. I was really pleased with it, and I think Punk was quite excited about it too. And next I marked out 4 little windows that were going above that little roofing bit, above the circle. It took a bit of counting and it took a bit of working out, but I finally got it how I wanted it. And with a little bit more work, I was able to do the window frames like the ones below. I quite liked it. I really liked it. Well, little chiselled pieces were turning up all over the server. This one, I suspect, was by Deej. Quite a few shenanigans to catch up on his channel. So I mentioned earlier how to get the wood grains the right way, and this is what Punk showed me how to do it. So you place one block and you place another block in a different orientation. Then you chisel them both, and then you break them and put them in your inventory crafting slot, and they become one multi-material chisel block. Who would have known how to do that? Well, I certainly didn't. Did you know that? Did you know that? Was I the only one that didn't know that? Well, when you place that in place, you could choose between the 2 different orientations of the wood. And that's how you get the grain of one wooden block to go in 2 different directions. Isn't it easy when you know how? Oh my goodness, that was a revelation. It was night time, and I was busily chopping down walnut trees to replenish our stock, when I spotted something that looked really spooky. It was watching me. It was stood there watching me. It had green eyes, and it was sort of floating. It was sort of undulating. I had to ask about it, and people knew about it. Yeah, everybody knew about it except me. And apparently it was a chiselled block. It was a block that had been chiselled and then used with a paintbrush with the leaf block in the first slot of your hotbar. So you right click the chisel block with the paintbrush and the leaf block is applied with all the characteristics of leaves. Oh my goodness me, it scared me half to death. Back to the house. I needed to create 2 little dormer windows on top of the roof. It took me a few goes to get it right, but I finally got something that I quite liked. I just needed to create another one next to it. But once I'd done one, doing the second one was quite easy. And then it was just about finishing off the roof altogether. I quite like these shingled roofs. They're quite neat and tidy. Although I wish the internal edge of them, I wish you could get them straight though. Because you couldn't really add any wood edging on the underside of it and have it look straight. I still needed to create the window frames on the front side of it. But they fitted really well and I think they suited the build. And I really liked the way they looked. The roof itself was nearly done. It just needed another row of shingles. There was an area, a very small area on our build that looked like it had a little bit of overgrown foliage on it. And I had spent time thinking about how I could get this green foliage on this little bit of the building. And seeing that leafy sculpture the other day gave me an idea. So I got a bit of compact dirt and I just chiselled it along the join between the bottom foundation stone and the above plaster. And using a paintbrush with a leaf block in the first hotbar slot and having a little nibble of hearty red meat stew with boiled cabbage, I applied the leaf block to the compact dirt. And it was awesome. There was a little problem with the back of it though. It looked like it obliterated the block behind. But when I went inside, it actually hadn't. It was just a visual glitch. I must say it looked very convincing though. It looked like there was no block behind it. But it was very easily rectified by removing the blocks behind it and just replacing them. And once you did that, it looked absolutely fab. That was gorgeous. So I did the rest of it. Look at that. I absolutely loved it. And of course, I had to do that on the other side as well. Next time I was on, there was a distinct Christmassy feel about the server. None more so than when I found a little present from Quentin. How gorgeous was that? It was a little mouse with a Christmas hat and Christmas gloves on. I absolutely adored it. It was gorgeous. Really was. I couldn't stop looking at it. Just look at that. Oh, I'm going to have to get chiselling again. I mean, you know, proper chiselling. The sort where you nearly starve to death getting that last bit done. But we had a house to build. Can't chisel this block, it's too unstable and might collapse. What? Well, I'd never come across that before. I was trying to lead my windows. And I was trying to add slate to a plaster block so I could carry on leading the windows, but it just would not accept the slate. This was so frustrating, and eventually Quentin came over to solve the puzzle for me. What I needed to do was to put some slate in the first slot on my hotbar, and then with a shift click of the paintbrush, it would assign the material in that first slot to the voxel. And then using my true chisel, I could place that material voxel by voxel within that block. One thing I really needed to do was to catch up with all of Quentin's chiselling tutorials. Nice. I didn't forget the attic windows either, but because they were so tiny, I made a different pattern for those. I think it suited those little windows. I quite like that. And in the daylight, I think they fitted the build really well. I really liked them. Well, that's about it for this episode. I'm going to try and fit another episode in before Christmas, but I've got a lot of things going on in real life at the moment, so I'm not making a firm promise, but I hope I'll be able to do it. So take care, everybody, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.